Renee and Tamara, does anyone know if Councillors Hughes and Bimansky are going to be attending this meeting, or? They're not on the committee.
This is Tamara. I haven't been advised. Renee maybe might have more information.
Okay, thanks. All right, I am showing that it's 1:30, and we have full attendance with all committee members here, including Mayor Heron, who is optional. So we can call the meeting to order. With the agenda, we've had a request to move the EMTSC up first, so we can do appointments and then the Transit Commission and go from there. So if everyone's okay with that, could I get a volunteer to move the agenda be adopted as amended?
Go ahead, Mike, go ahead.
The April 11, 2022 Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting agenda be adopted as amended, with item 6.4 being renumbered to item 6.1 and the agenda be renumbered accordingly.
Thanks for that, Councillor Kellick. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? I see hands. That is unanimous. Thanks so much.
You're on mute, Nettle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. That passes. Next up, we've got appointments. So we've got Ms. Polkovsky here to present on the Alberta Capital Region Wastewater Commission. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you. And while my virtual screen starts to become presented, awesome. So I wanted to take some time to come and present. I am sort of on a bit of a roadshow these days, presenting to all of the member municipalities in regards to who we are, what we do, providing a little bit of an education for any new members on council, and obviously open the door for an invitation to come out and have a tour of the facility, ideally in the spring, summer, or fall when it's a bit of a nicer weather as opposed to the frigid winds that we have right now. It is quite an impressive facility when you get to walk around and you get a much better understanding of how much waste we deal with on a daily basis when you come and walk around both on surface and in our underground tunnels. Next slide. So as part of the Alberta Capital Region Wastewater Commission, we are composed of 13 member municipalities that extend on the west side from Stony Plain and Parkland County, north to Moranborough, Sturgeon County, Bonaccord and Gibbons, and then south to our southern member municipalities, Leduc County and Beaumont, as well as EIA is in that area. And then the Sherwood Park and Fort Saskatchewan folks, and St. Albert being in the middle, where a lot of wastewater actually flows in proximity to St. Albert. Next slide, please. The commission has a relatively long-rooted history. We were formed in 1985 and were built through 88 with dollars from the province. We have a number of agreements with EPCOR to get the work done in the most sustainable manner possible, from an exchange agreement that we take some of North Edmonton and EPCOR treats our southern member municipalities at the lower of the two rates between us and EPCOR, to our biosolids agreement that really manages the solids portion of the waste that we treat. And when I say solids, it's about 3 to 7% solids depending on the day. So it's pretty wet solids. Next slide. From a legislation perspective, there's a number of strong pieces of legislation that really supports the work we do and how we do it. The MGA is really that foundation piece that provides us our autonomy and our ability to do the work we do. With changes to the MGA that happened a few years back, it provided a little bit more autonomy to the commissions out there to really manage ourselves and diversify a little bit of the work we do without having to go back to the government. The Alberta Environment Protection Act has two different pieces that support the work we do from the operator certification perspective. So making sure our operators are getting the CEUs and growing and being able to treat the waste that we get, as well as our operating license. So really the parameters that we have to treat our wastewater to. So how clean does the water need to become? That's regulated by Alberta Environment as well. And finally, the Federal Fisheries Act. So if we do have a release of deleterious substances, so wastewater into any water body, that's where the Federal Fisheries Act comes into play. And it's just another piece of legislation that sort of supports us and keeps everyone accountable. Next slide. In terms of the actual structure of the commission, we run a relatively lean organization. The board of 13, so our board is composed of one member from each municipality. It is an elected official, and then I am their sole employee. And then under me, I have 4 departments: the O&M, operation and maintenance, corporate services, which is really my softer services from my HR, my payroll, my purchasing perspective, my regulatory services, which is an interesting branch. A lot of administration works with our regulatory service folks to really ensure that industries within each member municipality are doing what they do and need to do in-house to kind of contain or have grit interceptors so that pieces aren't hitting member municipality systems and impacting them, and then our systems down the line. And then our engineering side of things, which actually is our capital projects, our in-house engineering and process, and those pieces. The other interesting side with our regulatory services is we have an in-house lab, which is fairly comprehensive. It maintains an ISO 17001 certification and is a requirement of our permit. Next slide, please. Our governance. So again, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. We have one director appointed by each member municipality. The director must be an elected official and they serve independently of the council. We then have a series of bylaws and policies that support the work we do. And through that, we have some standing and ad hoc committees from our workshop committee, our GM performance management committee, and our communication advocacy committee. And then we have bi-monthly meetings or monthly meetings with the board and an annual workshop that is scheduled for end of May. The budget's always something really interesting and what people want to hear a little bit more about. So we run a fairly consistent operating budget from year to year. Right now it's set at $30.2 million. Our capital program is at 28.4, and we roughly do somewhere between 22 and $28 million annually, depending on the year. Some of that might change depending on the number of unplanned line replacements that we have to do. And so we might have to fluctuate some of the dollars that are spent. New debt is $10 million this year, which basically manages the ebbs and flows of the capital program. In about the 9-year window, the commission becomes self-sustaining and doesn't need to pull any more debt. But until then, with some of the big projects that we have, we pull a modest amount of debt to manage the big payouts and manage what we can with incoming revenue. Our debt payment annually is 6.1 million with our total revenue of 49.8. So a net zero budget annually. So very simplified in terms of our wastewater treatment. We have wastewater from our 13 member municipalities. Oh, click the button a few times and you'll see, yes, keep going. Go back, sorry. Thank you. So a very simplified perspective of our wastewater treatment plant. So we have raw wastewater that comes in, greenhouse gases that go out, treated effluent into the North Saskatchewan, and a biosolids program. Now, a few interesting pieces here that I do want to highlight are the gases that we produce. We incorporate them into a boiler system, so they are used as much as possible to the internal heatings of each of our processes in our buildings. In the summer, we flare it more often, so that is a real benefit. As well as our biosolids program, I do want to highlight that. Our biosolids is unique in terms of the Canadian context. Not all wastewater treatment plants have the opportunity to positively apply their biosolids after they have been further treated. We do, which is fantastic. So in collaboration with EPCOR, we work with them. We have 2 different options for our biosolids. There is some mine reclamation that we do use our biosolids on, as well as farmers' fields, depending on, there's some regulations in terms of how many times they can be applied. But it really is a fantastic story that we have regionally because we can do this. Lots of wastewater treatment plants across the country have to landfill them, which is, it seems like a shame because these are high nutrient and there is some value in them. Next slide. So just a little bit about our facilities. We are the 3rd largest wastewater treatment plant in Alberta. We are completely biological nutrient removal, which means we use bugs. So it sort of is my jam. So we have a number of different tanks that we either bubble, we don't bubble, we sort of kind of bubble, and different types of bugs grow in each of those tanks and really kind of devour the various particulates in that water. So some like phosphorus, some like nitrogen. It just depends on what we have done to that environment to keep them happy. Which is really quite an interesting process. The temperatures do fluctuate a little bit throughout the winter months, obviously, and that changes how we manage our wastewater. We have 5 large-scale pump stations throughout the greater area, from Parkland County in St. Albert and out towards Gibbons and Fort Saskatchewan. The largest of our pumps being in St. Albert with 700 horsepower pumps, which makes, I don't know, a big truck look small.
How many do we have for those pumps?
We
Only 2 in the building open.
Pardon?
There's only 2 in the building open.
We have 3 there. We're taking one out and putting a few little ones there right now. Yeah, because again, those things pump out with the fury of all kind of Mother Earth behind. So we put in some smaller ones to really sort of be a little bit kinder to the system. It'll be better on the electrical bill. And then the big pumps will kick in when we have really high weather events. We have over 190 kilometers of force mains and gravity systems out in the world, which we see on a daily basis. So I have staff that drive the entire system daily, especially during this particular season. And currently our replacement value of our assets is about $700 million. Next slide. Collaboration is really one of our key pieces that we do see, that makes us successful and what keeps us connected to our member municipalities. When we do speak with our members, and the difference between the water commissions and the wastewater commission is really there's a lot of interconnection. We see ourselves as an extension of our member municipalities' wastewater systems. So our source control program is very connected and engages with your public works systems very consistently. In some communities, they engage with business licensing to provide some education, et cetera. And it's really a collaborative process between member municipalities and my staff. Our solids handling program, which is not more of an urban thing, it's more of a rural thing with truck hauling systems. So to haul septic systems, that's more of my rural municipalities are using those systems. Our regional exchange agreement. So we have a larger collaborative framework with EPCOR, which was an agreement between our board and the city of Edmonton at the time. It's now with EPCOR solely, that really works at sustainable servicing for wastewater for the greater Edmonton region. And so with that, we have a regional exchange agreement that basically says it should be serviced the most cost-effective way possible. So again, I serve as part of Edmonton. EPCOR treats my southern member municipalities, and we exchange dollars on the lower of the two rate, which right now is the commission. We are 20 cents lower than EPCOR, which is fantastic for us. And then our biosolids program is a very collaborative process because again, we truck our biosolids to that picture on the bottom right. Those are the lagoons at Clover Bar. And then we have piped supernatant, which is like really, really ugly wastewater that comes back to us, high ammonia, that then we treat back in our systems. We are a bit of a unique wastewater treatment facility because we have a lot of heavy industry. So the wastewater that we see is vastly different from the wastewater that the city of Edmonton sees at Gold Bar because we have so much heavy industry from that sort of east side of the world. Next slide, please. So some of our strengths that we really want to highlight is we are very effective at reducing load to the river. And so that's really the management of our water and the treatment of our water. Our source control program is really strong, and it's what many other commissions and wastewater treatment plants across the country are starting to model their systems after. We run 2 EMS systems, a 14,001, which the city of St. Albert also runs, as well as a 17,001, which is specific for our lab. We have a very strong relationship with our authorities, whether it's our members, EPCOR, industry, the Canadian Water Network, et cetera. There's a lot of time and effort put into maintaining those relationships and capitalizing on the information that each of them has. And then I'd be remiss to not mention my project delivery. So my capital projects, my lab, and again, my O&M, my operations group, they are invaluable and they do a really good job irrespective of what's happening. Next slide. Just some key messages. We really do feel that we are an extension of our members' wastewater systems, and we are looking forward to continuing to work collaboratively with everybody. Is there any questions?
Thank you so much. I missed your presentations. So I can't see the room very well. So if there's any questions in DCB, maybe we can start with those and then go to Councillor Bermansky if she has anything.
Oh, I got a couple of questions, Chair Jolly, if I could just go ahead then.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. So how do you interact with the Edmonton or St. Albert utility group? Where does one start and the other end?
Oh, so we start, so in terms of, I'll say, transfer of wastewater, is that there's a manhole right outside that lift station in the Botanic Garden at the end down there. That's my asset, the lift station, and there's a manhole right before that that's sort of St. Albert's last asset.
Okay.
And then it becomes my problem.
So if there's a problem on one side, we look after it. If it's on the other side, you look after it.
Yeah, and then there's still that back and forth in engaging if we are doing work that's going to impact the city. There is obviously some notification and making sure that we are working within reasonable times with each other.
So I got 1,000 questions, but I'll only do 3 of them. So reducing the load to the river, I mean, the mantra is the delusion is the problem to solution. So you know what I'm talking about?
With you, yes.
Okay. So at what level do you release the water when it's?
So it's very, very clean. It's like when you look at the water in a cup, you may mistakenly drink it. So you wouldn't think that it's dirty water by any stretch of the imagination. If and when you choose to come for a tour, you will see the water that comes into the plant, and it is, but never drink it. You would not drink that. So again, there is quite a bit of sediment and particulates that remove. We do put it through UV disinfection at the end to kill like the E. coli, the cryptosporidium, like the really nasty bugs that tend to grow in wastewater. We've taken everything out so that light can kill it. And it's fairly clean, but all those levels are regulated by the government through our permit. And we are generally well below our permit levels.
So, but it's not potable at that point.
So again, we are looking at some additional opportunities to reuse our effluent. So take our wastewater that is treated and disinfected to a release perspective, and then doing a tertiary treatment, so putting it through an additional treatment train, and then putting it back into industry as purple water. Because again, there are some high needs from the industry in relative proximity that we can support and provide some rate stabilization for the commission, but also some supportive opportunities.
So that would be termed gray water then at that point in time. Is there
Purple. We like the word purple.
purple water?
Purple.
Okay, is that like
Does the
purple
gray
gas
water go
then?
through purple pipes?
Purple rain, you gotta get it figured out.
Gray water is generally referred to as like the water portion of wastewater. So like if you are in the septic world of things, the septic is the black water, then you have your gray water, which could be your shower water or those types of things. But this is cleaner.
Fire extinguisher.
Okay, so is there a particular use for that? Like,
Oh, yes.
can industry just straight use purple water?
Again, depending on what they're doing with it, they might do some reverse osmosis treatment on it. Like it depends what they want to do with it.
Is there money in it?
Yes.
That comes
Multi-billion
back
dollar
to
industry.
municipalities?
Pardon?
That could come back to the municipality?
So again, I am a commission, so I can't generally release dividends to a commission, to member municipalities based on the framework I have. However, I can stabilize the rate so that municipalities aren't as impacted by any rate escalations, and they can choose to do things with their money elsewhere.
Last question.
No problem.
Biosolids, that was intriguing to me. What do we do in the Edmonton region that others don't?
Some of it's so it depends on the region. There is go to the island, there's just not enough land, right? So there's no land for positive application. But what we have here is we have a really good relationship with farmers. We have a good relationship with industry and the regulator. And so we've just got a really happy ecosystem that allows us to be positive with our biosolids versus other locations that have a little bit more outspoken residents or outspoken industries that don't want it applied. Like it's a NIMBYism.
No doer to it and stuff like that.
Well, I'm used to it. So,
Oh, thanks, Kate.
Is Vancouver still shipping theirs into, so Vancouver's shipping theirs all the way into just outside of Hinton to mine reclamations.
Really?
yeah, so the fact that I drive mine like 45 minutes is pretty positive from a financial
So
perspective.
it's like fertilizer.
Basically, liquid fertilizer in essence.
There you go.
Can you imagine Vancouver's costs?
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Killick, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just a question. You said the asset's worth about 700 million. Is it, do you have any big capital projects, like a long-term view of capital replacement that I'm sure you do, but are we expected to see any of those hit the books in the?
So they're already on the books. So we have a long-term rate model no differently than most member municipalities have in terms of their utility rate models. And our long-term capital plan is in it. So again, we've had a very aggressive line replacement program over the last 5 years that will continue probably 5 to 7 more. That's in the rate today. We have a large plant expansion that's planned for 2024. That's in the rate today. So again, we are very on top of what we have in our capital plan and what we based on the asset management that we're doing. And they have got a pretty robust asset management plan in terms of kind of down to the nut, the bolt that has to be replaced.
Okay, yeah, I was just obviously
Question.
concerned about, getting a big capital call unexpectedly.
No, great question.
All in the plan. Great. Thank you.
Mayor Herron, did you have any questions?
No, I'm good. That was a really good question because when I was on the commission from 13 to 17, the reserve buildup was the priority for that board because we didn't have enough reserves. You never get a cash call. It's
No, you
done through rates.
Yeah,
Rate
rates.
call.
Yeah, rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rate call.
I'm good though.
Okay, Councillor Bermansky.
Just one quick question out of curiosity. At what stage is the COVID monitored in the wastewater, and is it?
It's interesting.
So we pull it off our raw wastewater. So before any treatments happen to it. So it's a cumulative grab sample over a 24-hour period. So because if you can imagine the wastewater that comes from Parkland County versus the wastewater that comes from Sherwood Park takes vastly different times to get to the treatment plant. So we take tiny samples throughout the course of a 24-hour period, call that, April 10th, and then it gets tested. But it's at the very beginning, basically after we've taken out the garbage out of the system.
Okay, and is it zapped out of there, so to speak, after the fact or not?
Oh, and so it would be removed, or it would be denatured by UV disinfection.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Councillor McKay, I'm going to assume you don't have any questions that you don't already know the
No,
answer.
I'm only here for support and to just once to reiterate how great of a job Kate's doing for our commission.
That's great.
Did I miss, Kate, does Alberta Health come and take that sample and do the testing, or do you actually do the testing for the
No.
virus on site?
No, so the sample is done by the U of A.
That's what I thought. Yeah, you would.
It comes in.
We post those, I was going to say numbers, but the actual results are available.
Yeah, if you want it, I can get it to the link
Yeah.
and he can share it with
Yeah.
everybody.
I'll share the link if you're interested in knowing that,
Yeah.
because you can track it. Oh, wait, there you go. Natalie's already got it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. If anyone shout if there are additional questions. Oh, Mayor Herron, go ahead.
One final thing is, rather than just an open invite for a tour, why don't we, I don't know, is there interest in going on a tour?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think we should just schedule it. So why don't,
We can work it through administration and we'll just schedule it.
yes. Yeah, to get Dawn and Christina to find a date,
Yeah.
probably in June, maybe. Yeah. I'll bring a bag of hot dogs and.
I can feed you guys.
I thought Kate, she does steak and lobster.
Yeah, but you don't like the sauce she uses.
Because it's really a valuable tour, and I think it should be part of our orientation, honestly, but
Yeah.
that's fun. It's
No.
interesting and fun.
That's great. I agree.
And if it's raining, we'll postpone it to a nicer day.
Well, I mean, the vast majority of the plant is actually underground and very, very,
Dark tunnels.
they're not dark tunnels. But actually you'll be amazed at how clean the facility is outside of the tanks. You do not want to step into one of those, but other than that,
No height.
yes. Anyways, yep. Nope.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Polkowski, for the presentation and everyone's questions. So look forward to seeing you soon. Which brings us to, bear with me here, I believe it's the minutes. Anyone have any issues with the minutes as they were presented? All right. Mayor Herron, did you want to make that motion to adopt those as presented?
Sorry, yes, this was. I'm just finding the motion.
I can.
Oh, there, it's
On
on
the
there.
screen. It's on
Oh,
the,
it's the minutes. Yeah, sorry. The Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee minutes of February 14th, chosen to be adopted as presented. Sorry, Natalie.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. And I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? That's 1, 2, Mike. Okay,
It's
unanimous.
unanimous.
Thank you so much. Okay, which brings us to the Transit Commission. So do we have, I know we have a couple of appointments here to answer questions if need be. And who's doing this presentation?
I will be Councillor Jolie.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Trevor.
So I guess continuing the trend of regional commissions, good afternoon, committee members. I'm pleased to present bylaw 19/2022 to amend guarantee bylaw 39/2021 Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission. Today, I am joined by Paul Jankowski, Chief Executive Officer with the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission, and Lori Shea Smith, Chief Financial Officer with the EMTSC, who have made themselves available today to answer any questions more specific to the EMTSC should committee members have any. I'm also joined today by David LaFleur, City Solicitor, Ann Victor, Interim Director of Finance and IT, and Jay Mason, Director of Public Operations and Transit for more subject matter questions. As committee members are aware, a Blue Ribbon panel report regarding the global competitiveness of the Edmonton metropolitan region was released in 2016 that cited the region must improve its collaboration in 3 key areas, those being land use planning, economic development, and transit, in order to drive investment and to improve long-term sustainability. The City of St. Albert has been a strong supporter of regional transit, as it has been identified as a strategic priority for council for several years. As such, St. Albert has played an integral role over a multi-year period in establishing the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Commission, confirmed through ministerial order on January 26th. The long-term goal of this work has been to improve transit accessibility across the region, provide an integrated customer experience through improved community connections, and to improve regional economic and environmental outcomes. Leading up to the establishment of the commission, confirmed by a provincial ministerial order, St. Albert and City of Edmonton signed an MOU in 2017 to pursue the development of a transit services commission contingent upon provincial funding. In 2018, the province granted the 2 municipalities $3.7 million to move forward with next steps, which included expanding the MOU to all 13 municipalities within the region and developing a business case completed by Ernst & Young with the 13 municipalities through 2019 and 2020. Based upon this initial business case, 13 municipalities in the region signed on to join the commission. Since that time, the commission's board has initiated startup activities leading towards future service delivery and opening day service. This has included CEO recruitment, staffing, policy and bylaw development, and securing office space and associated professional consulting services for these items. To support initial startup costs, City Council, along with City of Edmonton being the 2 largest members of the commission, provided an initial loan guarantee amount of $5 million last year. The EMTSC board formally requested an increased line of credit guarantee from St. Albert and Edmonton City Council from $5 million to $7 million by a board motion at their March 17th, 2022 board meeting. Ministerial Order MSD 05-21 allows the commission to exceed regulated debt and debt service limits to a maximum of $7 million in total borrowing to finance the operational startup costs. If approved by council, the City of St. Albert would be guaranteeing a combined total of $2.3 million should the EMTSC default on the loan in the future. This action allows the EMTSC to raise their borrowing capacity and to proceed with startup costs, including preparation of a bottom-up costing model and transit plan that is expected to be complete later this year, reflective of current fiscal and transit realities, not included within the pre-pandemic EY business case. This plan is scheduled to be shared with the EMTSC board later this summer, and its development is being supported by St. Albert administration. EMTSC's goal is for opening day of service to commence in early 2023. The EMTSC's intent is to pay off the loan over time once service delivery commences, regional efficiencies are realized, and revenues are collected, including future municipal member requisitions from all participating municipalities. The commission, along with other stakeholders, including the Canadian Urban Transit Association, continue to advocate to other orders of government regarding permanent long-term transit funding. City Council seconded a resolution at the 2020 Alberta Municipalities Convention to this effect. Line of credit approach was contemplated in the initial business case as a means to support startup costs until service efficiencies are realized, and is the alternative to seeking member contributions at this time to support costs. So thank you again, Chair, Councillor Jolly. That concludes the presentation, and happy to take any questions or direct them to appropriate personnel.
Thank you. So I guess we'll start with some questions. Councillor Killick, did you want to start this round?
Yeah, Trevor, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for our guests being here today. The additional $600,000 that St. Albert is being asked to contribute to the line of credit, and the whole line of credit, it says it's going to be paid off over time, but it doesn't specify a time. So it kind of, and I understand it's line of credit that we're guaranteeing. It's not an actual physical dollar loan. But do we anticipate how long it would take to, if we had a high level forecast, how long will it take to pay off the total line of credit or wipe out the line of credit, I guess?
So I think the board has a policy on this, and maybe I'll defer to EMTSC staff to provide some more comment.
Sure.
So thank you very much for the question, Councillor, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a bit of an update at the same time to the City Council. Originally, under the original business case, it was envisioned that the payback period would probably be 3 to 4 years. And given the different financial situation that we're facing right now, given the fact that we're now identifying what kind of service we might expect in opening day, what kind of revenues we might expect on opening day and in the years beyond that, the board is still anticipating that it'll be probably a 3 to 5 year payback period, but it really will be subject to future operating budget approvals and the identification of appropriate revenues, offsetting the costs that are going to be incurred to deliver the services. So I don't have a specific answer for you, but the intent has always been that 3 to 5 year timeframe for repayment of that initial stand-up loan, should we be unsuccessful in the pursuit of additional funding from senior levels of government. As Trevor indicated, we're continuing that effort, seeking that the potential additional offsetting funding for these stand-up costs. And I know that over the course of the last couple of weeks in particular, there have been a number of outreach efforts, particularly with the provincial government, to seek that kind of potential contribution to help offset this initial debt. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, perfect. The other question I have is that getting our other municipalities engaged, usually the comment is you got to have skin in the game to be really engaged, and skin in this case is, comes down to dollars. So rather than just having St. Albert and Edmonton pony up for the additional 2 million ask, eventually we're going to be going back to those municipalities and asking for them to step up with their funding. Wouldn't this be the perfect time to ask those municipalities to pony up for at least this part and show that they're also financially engaged, rather than having it borne by just Edmonton and St. Albert?
So I think I can start, and then maybe I'll let Paul chime in too. But so I think this was a board decision, and just because St. Albert and Edmonton had processed it last year, the thinking was not reinventing the wheel, so to speak. But I believe the plan is that moving forward into next year, once service delivery commences, there is a requirement from all participating municipalities to contribute those municipal member requisitions. But I'll let Paul chime in.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's one that the board, quite frankly, wrestled with. I think it's important for us to differentiate between the guarantee that we require for getting this initial line of credit increased and the ultimate payback. So the ultimate payback of all of this debt will be shared in the appropriate proportions with all municipalities. At this point in time, all the board is seeking, all the board is required to come up with is just the additional paper-backed or budget-backed guarees. And the reality is that the current estimates are that about 85% of the operating costs are really going to be allocated or going to be in support of service in St. Albert and in Edmonton. The other 6 municipalities, really, it's been estimated, would be responsible for about 15% of the remaining costs, because it'd be about 15% of the estimated service that would be apportioned to the other municipalities. So the biggest contributors, the biggest players, the biggest benefactors of the regional service are St. Albert and Edmonton. And that's why, for ease and basically for administrative ease, the initial call out of the initial $5 million, it was suggested that Edmonton and St. Albert could bear the guarantee responsibility. And given the fact that there is a relatively small portion that's shared with the other six municipalities, I think the board envisioned that it might be appropriate to simply extend the primary guarantees by the proportionate amounts here.
So we get the lion's share of the benefit and
Ultimately, yes.
lion's share of adding the additional $600,000. I guess my final question in timing. I was pleased to see that the Edmonton representative also supported this and will be taking it back to Edmonton Council. Are we in sync in terms of our approval going in sync with Edmonton's approval? And is there any way to marry the two of them that says, you know, because I know Edmonton's struggling with a new council as well. Is there any way that we link that our approval is subject to Edmonton's approval, or is there any concern there, I guess, from a transit board perspective?
Well, again, I think I can start, and I see David turn his camera on here. But first off, so St. Albert Committee is discussing this today. And if committee supports the recommendation, we'll be going to council next Tuesday. That's when Edmonton City Council is contemplating the same item. And maybe David could speak to if council wanted to add any sort of wording contingent upon City of Edmonton.
So if I may, through the chair, that is technically possible. It's a bit awkward though, because for two reasons. First of all, you can imagine a situation where if we did that and City of Edmonton Council did the same thing, then like who goes first, the chicken or the egg, right? And the other thing is, in terms of the bank, it's really the bank that needs to see a support for the extended guarantee, and a conditional approval from council isn't really what the bank is going to want to see. So between those two factors, plus, as Trevor has just said, when I learned that, you know, the two councils are scheduled to deal with the same matter that same day, it probably shouldn't be a problem to, you know, to be able to monitor what Edmonton's doing, because they're online same way we are. And if for whatever reason they didn't approve it, then we wouldn't approve it. And similarly the other way, if it happens to come up first on our agenda, and if our council didn't approve it, I doubt that Edmonton would. But so for those reasons, we figured it would be best to just leave it this way. That said, if council really wishes to put that language in, or if the committee, I should say, wishes to put that language in, you could pass a motion directing it be sent to council with that caveat in the motion.
Thanks for that legal perspective or wording perspective. Do we, I mean, I haven't been at any of the committee meeting, board meetings. Do we think there's any with the new council in Edmonton? They've had some challenging items, mosquitoes, and many smaller than transit. Do we see any risk? And maybe I could ask our council representative on the committee to comment on that.
Sure. In discussion with the Edmonton board member and discussion around the board table, there isn't anticipated any problem with this. By and large, this is while the guarantees are real and it's a line of credit guarantee, the encumbrance is borne by all municipalities. So, but this is what we discussed around our board table with the lawyers there around what's just appropriate. Given that St. Albert and Edmonton have the vast majority of the transit services in the commission, it just made sense for us to carry forward. I mean, Devon, we'd be asking them to guarantee $3,000 or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So it just made sense to do it this way. I don't anticipate any problem.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Herron and Councillor Bermansky, I'm not seeing your hands going up. No, Councillor Bermansky, no. Mayor Herron, you're no.
Good.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion with respect to this item?
I would.
Here to do, but Wes.
Councilor, go ahead.
I'd love to make this motion.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you. That the Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee recommend to council that bylaw 19/2022 to amend bylaw 39/2021, the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission loan guarantee bylaw, be passed in order to increase that loan guarantee amount from a maximum of 1.7 million to a maximum of $2.366,700,000.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to assume that we've had good discussion on this, so I'm going to call for the vote. So all those in favor? That's 1, 2, 3, unanimous. Thank you so much, everyone. Which brings us, so thank you everyone for coming today to answer questions and stay for that first part of our meeting.
I'm sure you're interested in the sewage conversation.
It was interesting.
My share of that.
Yeah, same with them.
All right, so
Maybe not so much.
Thank you.
we've got a pretty heavy agenda here. So up next, we've got Ray Gibbon Drive, St. Albert Trail, and Mr. Schick presenting. So floor is yours.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me here this afternoon. I'm just going to share a screen and get the presentation rolling. Can everyone see this now? That should be a title page for Ray Gibbon Drive. Perfect.
That's great. Thank you.
Fantastic. So good afternoon, Madam Chair and Council Committee members. My name is Dean Schick and I'm the Manager of Transportation with the Engineering Services Department. I'm here this afternoon to present background on status and make a formal funding request for the Ray Gibbon Drive and North St. Albert Trail improvement projects. Although I hope to keep this presentation brief, there is a fair amount of information that I'll be sharing, which will begin with some general project purpose for these capital improvements, as well as then a transition then to project-specific updates and financial overviews that will start with Ray Gibbon Drive and move to St. Albert Trail North, and then with a final capture of the recommendations to the committee and then open up for questions. As a summary, both projects of Ray Gibbon Drive and North St. Albert Trail were priorities within the city's 2018 Transportation Network Improvement Strategy, and recommendations of improvements to both corridors were largely centered around adding additional vehicle lanes, improving intersections, and enhancements to accommodate active modes through placement of sidewalk or trails. In the case of Ray Gibbon Drive, it was to widen the cross-section from a 2-lane cross-section to a 4-lane. And for St. Albert Trail, it was to add a northbound and southbound travel lanes to increase from a 4-lane to a 6-lane cross-section. And again, for both projects, improve intersections, as well as address any incidental work associated with utilities, street lighting, and landscaping. Key background information on Ray Gibbon Drive would include that Ray Gibbon Drive from the South City limit to Leclerc Way was a top priority segment for improvement within the city's 2018 network improvement strategy. Each segment of the full corridor was identified within the top 10, however, separated and split by other network improvements, such as portions of St. Albert Trail North. Improvements were anticipated to be completed to the corridor within the city's boundary and were planned for completion in a multi-phased, multi-year delivery, with 4 phases largely split by using the arterial connections that connect to Ray Gibbon Drive as breaking points. And as noted, the improvements to the corridor largely targeted twinning to a 4-lane cross-section with a combination of active modes through sidewalk and trails, addressing the new bridge structure to support the new lanes, and incidental work of utilities, street lighting, and landscaping. Ray Gibbon Drive is anticipated for further improvements that ultimately complete this roadway as a provincial freeway, along with interchanges. And cost estimates for planned improvements were developed by a targeted review that provided both operational analysis and more defined, detailed cost estimates through engineering reviews. This early engineering investment to Ray Gibbon helped to inform on both the city's project charter as well as the cost share agreement with the province. Overall, the total estimated cost for widening Ray Gibbon Drive within the 4 phases was estimated at a $54,209,000 price tag, and the city and province finalized the cost share agreement in 2019 that recognized a 50-50 split and identified that the city would front end costs for completion of phase 1 and 2 estimated to be in the $27 million range, and the province would front end costs for phases 3 and 4 with their portion of funds not coming into effect until the year 2025. Improvements to Ray Given Drive started in 2019 with work on phase 1 for engineering and design, which was approved and completed through a dedicated project fund to complete that design portion. Construction of phase 1 and design and construction of phase 2 were approved through a different and updated project account, and phase 1 construction began in 2020. Phase 1 from the South City limit to just north of Leclerc Way has been completed and is currently in a period of warranty and work to address deficiencies. Within phase 1 completion, there was additional scope completed associated with improvements to the Anthony Henday Drive westbound off-ramp at 184th Street, as well as additional intersection improvements at the old 137th Avenue and 184th Street intersection. This additional work was completed through a tri-party agreement in collaboration between the City of St. Albert, Alberta Transportation, and City of Edmonton. Costs for additional work were split between the City of Edmonton and City of St. Albert. Phase 2 work from north of Leclerc Way to north of McKenney Avenue is currently in progress as it began in 2021 and was anticipated for a 2-year completion, anticipated to be completed by the end of 2022. Currently, bridge work is underway and road work is anticipated to begin again in May of this year. During phase 2, additional scope has been added to address the trail crossing on the south side underneath the Ray Given Bridge to raise the trail to a level that will hopefully minimize the influence of higher water levels that typically result in annual trail closure. From a lesson learned also from designing phase 1 separately and the impact of consideration of the broader corridor design, administration also tendered design work of phase 2 and detailed design of phase 3 with preliminary design of phase 4 all together. This work is required to complete the full corridor, but resulted in design costs of phase 3 and 4 advancing sooner than was anticipated. The benefit has been cost savings in the overall design in comparison to estimates and a more informed design for phase 2 and future phases, which has also allowed greater information sharing and collaboration between the city and developers who are planning adjacent development, such as the Shiro development, and as a result, require improvements to adjoining roadways to Ray Given. A financial overview of the Ray Given Drive phase 1 and phase 2 costs are shown here in this slide, highlighting the original estimated cost and actual cost to date. So I'll just kind of use my cursor here to say the first column here on the left is the corridor, the estimated cost is the second, and then actual costs. And the last column is essentially from the approved budget, applying the actual costs and reducing the budget as you go down the chart. Please note that again, in 2019, phase 1 design work was approved under a single and separate budget of $780,000. The estimated cost of design and final actual value of design work performed were very close in the end, with just over $10,000 in savings for the city. And a new project and approved budget of $26,714,500 was approved to support construction of phase 1 and completion of design and construction of phase 2. So that's why it jumps summary from the 26 million approved budget minus the 7.4 million of the actual drops down, and that's those numbers that you'll see as you go down the chart. For clarity as well, the estimates created for Ray Given Drive at the time were at a level of accuracy of Class D, which equates to approximately about plus or minus 20%. As I quickly noted earlier, the work performed on the Anthony Henday Drive at 184th Street and Old 137th Drive Avenue intersection were performed through a cost share agreement with the City of Edmonton and St. Albert. The costs shown in this table are reflective of St. Albert costs only. So there's about 556,000 is reflective of our costs only, whereas the City of Edmonton had agreed upon a portion of funding of 500,000. As you can see, the resulting calculation and remaining funds leaves the budget in a deficit of approximately $914,200.
I'll ask a question and I'll give you a chance to take a sip of coffee or water there, give you a break in speaking. If we could just go back to the previous slide. The estimated costs, we'll say phase 1 at 8.7. Does that include the plus or minus, and I assume that's the plus side of the original estimate that was 20%, or is that bang on the original estimate without any plus minus?
That's the original estimate.
So
And
that's-
so, so the original estimate aligns to essentially the approved budget, and the borrowing bylaw would reflect the plus or minus the contingency of that value, the added percentages. So the project budget was the 26 million and some, and the borrowing bylaw was approved at the 36.
Right. So just so I'm perfectly clear, you had an estimate of 8.7 and you came in for a construction project that came in actually below budget.
That is correct.
Plus or
Yes,
minus.
that is correct for phase one. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
Should have
questions?
that
We
drink
can
of coffee or something.
So,
Fisherman's friend.
damn puberty. Sorry. So,
There you go.
this table now provides an overview of work completed that was not originally anticipated with the original cost estimates for work to be completed within phase one and phase two. The investment of phase three detailed design and phase four preliminary design has resulted in cost savings overall to the project, but it is again an advancement of funds just under about 580,000, just under 600,000 earlier than originally anticipated for the project delivery. In addition, the Ray Gibbon Drive project has front-ended the full portion of the Anthony Henday Drive at 184th Street and Old 137th Avenue improvements, to which the actuals of construction were approximately 900,000. But however, the City of St. Albert and the City of Edmonton again came to a cost share agreement to which the City of Edmonton would fund $500,000 of that share work. St. Albert administration has invoiced the City of Edmonton for the work and has received the payment that is within recovered costs for the project. The total additional costs captured here at a value of approximately $1.55 million has been offset with other project savings. So this goes to actually Councillor Killick, your comment around the savings or reduced costs from the original estimate. That sees then an overall forecast overage of the budget to be approximately $914,200. So there have been cost savings in the project itself, largely within phase one. And this overage then represents, so this total additional costs are taking into account work that has been completed above and beyond the original and estimated scope. And this value has dropped though because of cost savings. I'd also like to acknowledge though that there is a substantial remaining scope of work in phase two. And there is some additional current risk with the project as well. Bridge work has advanced since January of this year, and unfortunately the project is not exactly at a point for optimal for this time of season, seeing some delay, and project delivery concerns have occurred, which administration is currently attempting to resolve with the contractor on site. Delay to the bridge work will ultimately influence road work for allowable traffic management to support the completion of intersection. This is the Ray Gibbon Drive at McKinney intersection. And road work, and although increased costs may be addressed through recovery from the bridge contractor, the city will likely have to front end costs and continue to work in progress. So again, just for clarity, what I'm suggesting there is that if there may be delay costs as a result of contractor work or influence, we can recover costs through our contract management. However, again, to keep the project rolling and on track, we will be attempting to kind of keep things moving. And so we could see front ending of such costs. In addition,
so we have a delay penalty in there, Dean, or
there is a site occupancy, and so it's just same mentality, just different wording where there is a cost associated with them going beyond the schedule of the contract.
Okay.
In addition, there is substantial work remaining, approximately 55%. Of surface associated with the road work, intersection improvements, trail systems. And although less risk is involved, this work again may be influenced by the bridge considerations, potential economic times with materials and costs, as well as, any influence to the schedule could see impact from engineering and construction management services as well for the project. In recognition of the
Dean, is it public information, or can it be public information as to what the delay is?
At this point in time, it's probably not a great opportunity here to go public. I mean, we can just simply share that there is some seasonal influence, and in terms of, I guess, again, I'll leave it at a sense to right now say that some contractor project delivery that may be an influence, but we're working with them and trying to collaborate as strongly as possible and best possible to get the project back on track. But we are seeing some schedule influence, and at this point in time, I would leave it at that, as
Fair
we're
enough.
trying
Thank
to
you.
continue to collaborate with them as a project team.
Fair enough.
And so in recognition of the forecasted budget overage and the influence of work remaining, administration is requesting the council's consideration, this committee and the council's consideration for approval of $2 million from the currently approved borrowing bylaw of Ray Given Drive, bylaw 18-2019. A portion of this value, approximately 50%, is requested in alignment with a contingency to complete the project and allow field decisions without delay of any further funding requests in the event they occur. So again, just in recognition of that the overage right now is anticipated to be that $914,200. And then additional funds is just more intent that it's not anticipated. We would obviously not be looking to spend money that we don't need to. However, it would put us in a position that should the conditions of the bridge work require further environmental protective action, additional traffic management, additional contract construction management scope, and any influence for materials and the economies here, we'd be able to make things happen and keep the project on schedule, or as best as possible back to schedule. This is a transition where I was going to go to St. Outro, but before we do, maybe I'll just, I like the discussion as we go too. So if that's okay, if there's any questions as well.
Yeah, Dean, I'd like to just go back to Ray Given Drive and McKinney Meadowview intersection. Two things here. Are we, as we're doing Ray Given Drive intersection there, are we going all the way back on McKinney to connect up to where it's 4 lanes so that we don't have to go back and do more construction later? I haven't seen any earth being moved or anything being done there. Are we doing it all together, even though maybe part of that road could be looked at as not Ray Given Drive? But
yeah, excellent. Thank you for that question, Councillor Killick. We are. Each of the roadways connecting to Ray Given Drive has been captured within scope to perform widening with the improvements to Ray Given Drive, albeit these, just for clarification as well, are not, that scope of work is not part of the Ray Given Drive agreement with the province. Obviously, their cost share is aligned to any improvements to the corridor of Ray Given itself. The intersections are inclusive, so there's a portion of that, but that's if you think of it as to where the turning bays may begin for the intersection on McKinney Avenue to where it's currently a 2-lane cross section starting at Rosegate, the intersection on McKinney Avenue. We will be addressing that, and that's one of the key areas that we're looking to start in 2022 here for the McKinney Avenue widening. With phase 3, similar action will occur with Giroux Road. There's about 200 meters thereabouts of Giroux Road to widen on the east side of Ray Given Drive. With phase 1, we did some improvements to Leclerc Way, inclusive of the Leclerc Way and Riel Drive intersection. So short answer would be yes, all these key connections, we're looking to try and do the improvements to the intersection to minimize further disruption, albeit future intersection improvements and whatnot will be required as Ray Given again transitions to that freeway status. But these key corridors will be addressed as we go with each progressive stage of improvement.
I apologize, Dean, I haven't seen a project charter for that piece of work. Is it actually a project that we have on the books and funded for this year, specifically Rosegate to on McKinney?
Yeah,
That-
they are there, and they're part of offsite levy work as well. And again, caught in funding considerations with the Ray Given Drive improvements.
Okay, so McKinney is, and Giroux
And
would
Giroux as well.
be, Giroux would be later in 2025, that we won't get to that section of road until 2025, is that?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we've got a question from Councillor Birmanski.
Hello, Dina. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I have the understanding that the province was supposed to pay for phase 3 and 4. So would we get the design costs back from the province, and would they stick with that design, or may they go a different direction somewhat?
No, thank you for your question. That they have, we did prior to tendering the work for the design of 2, 3, and 4. We contacted the province to make sure that they were well aware and supportive, recognizing again the influence and the impact that happened with doing phase 1 by itself, as it kind of separating these phases and you know, not doing it in a more holistic point of view. We did confirm that they were okay with that, and the overall again, cost share itself captures full engineering and design of the entire project from phase 1 to phase 4 and came to that 50-50 cost share split. The ultimate cost share will be reflective of the final actual costs. And so at the end of the day, yes, the design is a portion that will be split, and they are aware of what we've tendered and what process we followed and where we're at in the status of the project. They're fully aware and on board.
And when do you expect to see that money back? What year?
That would be 2025 that we wouldn't see any portion thereof. So phase 3, likely again, you know, it'll be a portion of the design will come back for phase 3, largely focused on phase 3 in their first payments. And phase 4 would be coming after I believe phase 4 is anticipated for funding in 2028, 2029.
Thank you.
Right, Mayor Herron or Councillor Broadhead, any questions before we move on to St. Albert Trail?
I have one more question.
Go for it.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Killick.
This is an easy one, I'm sure. So the trail underneath the bridge, the walking trail, is being looked at as part of the construction to mitigate the flooding issue there, as I understand it. And is there a trail underneath the bridge on the north side to connect to White Spruce and all that other side of the river?
No, excellent detailed question. And yeah, the short answer is yes. Best effort to try and minimize. I mean, I want to be very cautious here to say that we're ultimately going to fully resolve the issue on the south, but we're raising the trail, recognizing some influence that trail needs to be maintained in the clearance from the bridge structure itself. So we are raising that trail. We were successful in that design. Following the environmental review for phase 2, there is no trail proposed on the north side. It's anticipated that will be slightly re-landscaped, and boy, you never ask a transportation guy a detailed environmental question, but at any rate, trying to accommodate and make it a little bit more pleasing and maybe incentive for wildlife to use the north side as a crossing under the bridge. And no trail will be accommodated on the west side of Ray Given from McKinney Avenue to the north side of the bridge, largely because the span and the issues of trying to accommodate a pedestrian on the west side, we couldn't get people across, and with that anticipated to be an environmental wildlife corridor, we wanted to try and keep people away from that side. And the trail will then be accommodated on the east side of Ray Given from McKinney Avenue to the bridge, cross the bridge on the east side, and then connect to go either west to the Lois Hole Park or into the Rotary Park area to the east.
Okay, thank you. Great.
All right, thank you. Anything else before we go on to St. Albert Trail? Okay, I'm seeing nothing. So back on you, Dean.
Super. All right, we'll keep this. So in following a similar presentation pattern as what we just went through with Ray Gibbon Drive, I'll provide some key background information on the North St. Albert Trail improvements. St. Albert Trail from Boudreaux Road to Coal Mine Road was the second top priority from the 2018 Transportation Network Improvement Strategy. Again, the full corridor segments were within the top 10 identified priorities, however, split by other road segments such as Ray Gibbon Drive. Improvements were originally anticipated to be completed to the corridor in a multi-phase, multi-year delivery with 3 phases from just north of the Boudreaux Road intersection to the Neil Ross Future Fowler Way intersection from 2019 to 2022. And I don't think I'm spoiling any surprises here, but the schedule has not is not being carried out the way that it originally was anticipated, with phase 1 now in a multi-year delivery itself. And additional consideration will be made and shared during this project presentation for schedule changes and timeline updates. Improvements to the St. Albert Trail corridor at the north end of the city were largely aligned to widen the corridor to a 6-lane cross section. And again, incidental improvements with the active mode accommodation, sidewalk or trail, in intersection work, utility, street lighting, and landscaping. Cost estimates for improvements were derived solely from the 2018 Transportation Network Improvement Strategy. And so for clarity, this strategy alone provided a conceptual and high-level cost for the improvements. The city developed the project charter in 2018 following the network improvement strategy for 2019 budget considerations, which were approved for the $18.95 million, and an approved borrowing bylaw based upon the project estimates that were approximately 35% contingency, with a borrowing bylaw approved at $26 million. Detailed design work began in 2019 for North St. Albert Trail and identified immediately site-specific considerations associated with the project, such as the consideration of the roadway alignment with future LRT protection, intersection treatments, and utility requirements. Such considerations and details were unknown at the time and not considered at the time of the project charter development and the funding estimate that was created. The current status of the North St. Albert Trail improvements is that phase 1 construction began in 2020 and is still in progress. To date, Coal Mine Road improvements are completed, as well as a substantial portion of St. Albert Trail corridor with the 3 travel lanes open for both northbound and southbound movements. However, 2022 construction will see the completion of intersection work at St. Albert Trail and Villeneuve Road. Villeneuve Road improvements, along with commercial accesses, the trail placement, and final paving and landscaping. Work for phase 1 is anticipated to begin in May, so shortly here, subject to weather, and to be completed by the end of the construction season. I just want to reference here as well that similar with the improvements that were performed with Ray Gibbon and the Henday, in regards to St. Albert Trail and the northern phase improvements, Coal Mine Road was a cost share agreement. Some work was performed on Coal Mine Road, and a cost share agreement developed through the City of St. Albert and Landrex, recognizing that Coal Mine Road was transitioned from a previous arterial classification to a collector, and it represented new servicing for new growth and development. Hence, that would be the representative of the developer portion, and yet also maintaining service and access to existing development, which would be the existing communities like Erin Ridge. And so that was split out of 50-50 cost share. As well, phase 2 and phase 3 design work has also been initiated. Phase 2 is complete for design, and its construction is currently in tendering with anticipated closure next week on April 21st. Phase 3 is at a 90% design level and is being used for forecasting project estimates and planning for corridor project delivery.
Could I ask a question on the design, Dean?
Yes.
Before you move on, I had conversations with Mr. Scoble last term about providing either below or above grade pedestrian crossing. And his suggestion to me was that we work it into the design of North St. Albert Trail. And now I'm looking at this and it sounds like I might have missed the boat. Is it too late to try to find some? What I want to do is avoid at grade crossing of St. Albert Trail, because there's kids in Erin Ridge that are going to school in Jensen Lakes. There's kids that are going to the Landmark Theater. So there's a lot of pedestrian movement and it's not safe across 6 lanes. So comments?
Yeah, absolutely. So that what definitely during the design of phase phase 1 and 2, we did look at a separated pedestrian structure, a bridge. We looked at an underpass as well as a overpass. One of the recommendations were to go with an overpass, but that comes at a substantial cost as well. And recognizing that similar to, I'll use the McKinney Avenue pedestrian overpass as well, where the overpass exists and there's a fair amount of use for it. We still had substantial network requests and concerns to accommodate pedestrians at grade intersections. I think there's a safety improvement at the end of the day. Obviously, any kind of removal of conflict or anything or separation from road users is a good thing. However, at the end of the day, one of the concerns that we would have is that we may not fully get away from the anticipated desire paths of pedestrians, because trying to find an optimal spot that's going to accommodate everyone and check their box for where the direction they want to go and from their point of destination to their origin is a tough one. And at the end of the day, I don't mean to give a long-winded answer. The short answer would be is the project itself is not hindering the possibility to place a pedestrian overpass. It's just not part of the project scope to this date to date.
Okay, so you're saying if I can find the money in 3 years from now, we could still put in an overpass?
It could be considered and has been part of the preliminary design considerations with the improvements, just not an actionable structure to be built within these phases.
So there was no cost savings to do it at the same time as construction?
I wouldn't say there wouldn't be. I don't think they're not to the degree to say that with the budget that we saw and with the budget implications of the multiple network improvements that we're facing in the city right now, in particular in the Northwest to service new growth and development areas and the variety of projects that we have on the go right now. What I struggled with is to say that the cost of a pedestrian overpass came at a higher priority than these other network considerations and improvements for investment.
We're talking $5+ million for an overpass?
Yeah, you're looking in the range between 7 to 9 million right now.
Oh my God. Can you find us some money, Diane?
While you're at it.
Thanks, Dean.
Yeah, so I wish I had better news.
No, it's okay.
I really do, guys.
Mr. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Mayor.
I was going to say, I go through it's Belrose St. Albert Trail intersection every day, and there's people, even though the overpass is right there, people are still doing that grade crossing probably most days anyway. So I get that's a good opinion. Thank you.
Just kind of a really brief follow-up question to that. I think originally we were told it was around $4 million for that overpass. So that really doubling in costs, is that just having to do with the changes over the last couple of years?
It's definitely had some material costs, and then I believe that maybe I can't recall where the 4 million may have been coming from. Maybe at a very preliminary, like a minimum value may have been shared. But yeah, I throw that number out there in, again, a very, like right now sitting at the kind of conceptual level, right? So as detailed design occurred, we would get more refined numbers, but at the time it would likely, with current times, I would anticipate with cost of materials that's the value that we would be looking at right now.
Thank you very much.
And if I can, just before I move on, one thing is it was also considered by administration to address the pedestrian separation through the federal active transportation grant.
Oh, yeah.
But again, just because obviously we look and recognizing that it could be a network desire. One of the issues that we faced was, of course, again, recognizing that the network as well has multiple gaps with disconnection from transit services and along arterial roadways, sidewalks, oh my God, trails. It was actually suggested that we address those gaps before presenting something as a pedestrian overpass as again, the investment opportunity. So. Sorry, a little bit off.
No, sorry, that's my
Great,
fault.
thank you.
Thank you for that.
So similar to the financial information that was shared for Ray Gibbon Drive, this slide highlights the original project cost estimates with actuals, or in some cases, updated estimates has been informed through the design work completed, and the forecasting of budget as work progresses or would be completed. The current approved budget is $18.95 million, and the following completion of phase one, it is anticipated a budget of approximately $3.297 million will remain. This accounts for phase one construction as well as design completion for phases 2 and 3. Phase 2 construction is currently estimated at a value of approximately $7.5 million, which will leave the project account in deficit by $4.203 million. This value is beyond the current approved budget, again, of $18.95 million, but within the approved value of the borrowing bylaw, which just for a reminder is $26 million. The updated estimate for phase 3 work, which completes the portion, so just for clarity as well, phase 1 is a segment of North St. Albert Trail that goes from north of Boudreaux Road, Drew Road intersection to north of Coal Mine Road. And again, that work is in progress right now. Phase 2 would go from that north boundary of phase 1, just north of Coal Mine Road, to a location just north of Everett Drive North or the Jensen Lakes Boulevard intersection. The updated estimate for phase 3 work, again, which completes the portion of St. Albert Trail from north of Everett Drive North to the Neil Ross Road Future Fowler Way intersection, inclusive of the work at the intersection, is approximately $3.2 million, to which this value is not only beyond the current approved project budget, but also beyond the current value of the approved borrowing bylaw.
So Dean, just on that slide, sorry to jump in here. Phase 1, I understand in the backgrounder that was provided, it went from 8 million to 14 million, largely due to a $6 million increase because we shifted the roadway a little bit to the left towards the commercial space to make room for future LRT. Was that the big driver, shifting? When we say shifting, that is that what it is?
Yeah, that's it exactly. So this slide provides an overview of essentially the substantial amount of scope that had some cost influence. I mean, there were here the smaller details and whatnot that influenced, but these were some substantial changes that were informed only through completing the detailed design that recognized the actual work to be completed. So in 2018, the concept work really just took values of work to add additional travel lanes, add sidewalk, make intersection improvements that were assumed through the modeling to be required. And then we started the project. In 2019, one of the first steps, I believe, and we were in front of council, I believe it was maybe late February of 2019, was the identification to say the city really needs to land on what final alignment is going to be followed with St. Albert Trail corridor to consider a combination of LRT. And so the initial LRT study in either scenario anticipated, a small shift of northbound lanes or a shift of the southbound lanes, and future consideration of whether or not those lanes would still be manageable and maintainable if the city were to deliver LRT. So I just want to emphasize here, in case there is any concern, question, or anything like that this project is delivering LRT, it is not. It is solely focused on protecting the current approved corridor for LRT, which is the St. Albert Trail corridor. And so in 2019, when we started the work, detailed design, we essentially looked at that to say, well, what's the influence of accommodating LRT? And to minimize the influence, or I would say to best protect the investment of the improvements to the corridor along with accommodating LRT for future consideration, it was to actually transition the LRT to the west side earlier than what was originally anticipated in the LRT study. It was, I believe, north of the Everett Drive intersection where it was originally kind of anticipated it would transition from east side to west side. And so we pulled that back and transitioned it earlier. And then it's proposed right now that the LRT is protected with a shift of the southbound lanes. It can be accommodated. There'll be influence to accesses and potential intersections at the end of the day on the west side. However, those travel lanes are well protected and the investment is not anticipated to be lost from this scope of work that's being performed now.
So I guess the root of my question would be that it's not a $6 million overage because of construction costs or anything like that. We made a conscious decision to say we wanted to build the road in a design that would protect future use or availability to accommodate LRT.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
That is.
You.
Yep. So that's excellent segue. I mean, this slide represents key areas of consideration that have influenced ultimately that were informed through the design and influenced adjustments to the original cost estimate to where we're at today. So going back, that alignment is a substantial one in the shifting of the travel lanes. The storm management improvements are reflective of transitioning the corridor from a rural surface drainage roadway to a stormwater managed system that collects and drains through a minor storm system. And through detailed survey work, findings showed very minor elevation differences, which requires substantial shallow utility placement and thus required additional consideration for installation and protection for seasonal impacts. Further traffic analysis was also performed in a couple of locations that caused some additional scope and design considerations, one being at St. Albert Trail and Coal Mine Road, to which an additional northbound left turn was identified as needed to effectively support demands of existing and forecasted volumes and to maintain satisfactory levels of service, as well as the roundabout design on Villeneuve Road at the west commercial access that was completed following traffic analysis and operational review that investigated the result of changing the existing east. So there's an access right directly adjacent to the McDonald's that is following the detailed design was recognized to recommend a transition from an all access to a right in, right out only. And then an operational analysis of the impact of making that change was done, and that west commercial access showed significant operational impact. And so a roundabout was proposed at that location to address these and service the area well and maintain acceptable levels of service. As well as, again, the project schedule changes for completion of phase one has influenced the multi-year delivery versus anticipated single-year original completion anticipation, and resulted in increased costs for support of engineering and construction management and professional services. So high-level cost estimates with these key areas are aligned to the overall project overage. So if you see here, the $9.7 million is kind of reflective here, and the separation between the two, the 9.453, I'm not going to lie, there was some rounding, so it could have been influenced, but they're largely supportive and in line with one another.
Just the right in, right out at McDonald's, will there be actual, I don't know, the term barrier separation on Villeneuve so that people will know that they can't shortcut and try and do an illegal turn there?
Yeah, there should be an island separating the east and westbound movements that should prohibit the anyone from making a left in, eastbound left in, or exiting left out.
And do we have enough room to accommodate the kind of turning radius of the semi trucks that I always see stuck there, driven up over top of the barricade?
Yeah, I mean, the intersection improvement hasn't been completed yet. And so that will be addressed with the curb.
Okay. Yeah, it was fun to see, but
no,
it was
I pushed one off.
Not a good thing to experience.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor McCray.
Thank you. Following along the line there with the Villeneuve Road turn roundabout, is that going to be large enough for semis? Because I mean, there are some semis that would use an access or go around and use the back of Walmart. So I mean, my concern would be is if it's the same size it's at Everett or the same size it's at Ebony, they're not big enough to accommodate that. So I'm assuming that's going to be a much larger or 2-lane one.
So it is transitioning similar to Everett and Ebony, and it does have a mountable curb that is anticipated to accommodate. Similar commercial vehicles actually use the Ebony and Everett roundabout as well to access the commercial area to the north into the private development roadway north of Ebony. They have done their turning models, and it will be a mountable curbing that is there. So that lower level curbing that's in that roundabout is meant for larger vehicles. Hopefully no one in a smart car is doing a Dukes of Hazzard and going across it or anything like that. But it is meant for being mountable and servicing larger vehicles to accommodate that movement.
Okay, but my only comment would be around that, and I'd like to hear what, like the snow plows and all that, are they mounting there and cleaning that area as well? Because I mean, it was a little bit of a hodgepodge at Everett and Ebony.
That's a great question, and I'm not going to lie, I haven't had an opportunity yet to specifically engage with our public operations or transit operators around the roundabout. We're presenting, that roundabout is actually going to be a presentation to the Transportation Association of Canada. And so we'll be taking that feedback and sharing that. And to date, though, I can share that I haven't received, typically they're very quick to let us know if something is an issue. And through the season, no one was in touch from public operations or transit. So sometimes I hate to say I use no news as good news, but we'll definitely be engaged with them to find out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just something that I observed both at Ebony and Everett, and then also and Coal Mine, and at the other roundabout is that during a snow event, I mean, they would clean the driveways or the passageways, but not they probably didn't think to clear the roundabout itself, that lower curb. So you could see where drivers kind of experimented cross country, and the one particularly at Everett and Ebony, well, I mean, you've got a big rock feature in the middle too that I wouldn't want to take on and tackle. So that's just something that I observed. So I'd be just concerned in relation to ease of access and the fact that, I mean, some of these, as Councillor Killick's identified, they mount those New Jersey medians because they can't do the turning radius during the construction. And I realize that that's going to be fixed, but my other concern would be right at Walmart. So.
Well, I appreciate that input, and we'll get in touch with our maintenance crews for feedback and to inform on any possible influence or impact here. Because that'll be also considered with intersection improvements on Villeneuve Road at Denison and future phasing of Villeneuve as well.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Schick or comments about kind of the proposed motion? Oh, it's a quiet room.
He always gets, wow, we've asked so many questions.
Whenever Dean shows up, he's always asking for money, so whatever.
All right, well, so on that note, I guess, is there a volunteer for bringing forward a couple of motions?
I can do it.
Great, thank you, Mayor Hearn.
Oh, did you want Mike? Mike's gonna do it.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Councilor Kelly.
I was going to do it and then they disappeared. That the Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee recommend to Council, one, that the budget for the project number 420424, Ray Gibbon Drive improvements based on Project Charter Engineering 074, be increased by a total of $2 million, and that the increase in budget be funded through $500,000 recovered from received payment from the City of Edmonton and $1.5 million from debt under borrowing bylaw 18/2019. And two, that the budget for the project 419421 North St. Albert Trail Corridor Management Implementation based on Project Charter Engineering 070 be increased by a total of $5.5 million, and that the increase in budget be funded through $500,000 recovered from received payment from Landrex and 5 million from debt under borrowing bylaw 9, 2019.
Thank you. That was a long one. So I think we've had good discussion. So if there's not anyone who's itching to change minds, I'll call for the vote. So all those in favor? That passes unanimously. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Schick. It was good seeing you again.
Thank you, Dean.
Okay, so we've been here for an hour and a half. How about let's take 5 minutes? So back in seats at 3:06. Does that work? Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Sean, I don't see people. Are we ready to go or need a little bit more time?
Look, watching it's or
Wait, Council, we're just getting back to our seats here, it looks like.
Thank you.
$6 million over that it wasn't a construction issue or is that council? Yeah.
Yeah, I will let them know.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I didn't think we needed. It's a pretty strong majority of the top three, so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Right.
The chair is calling everybody in.
Thanks, Councilor Mackay. All right, we're gonna get rolling on the 10-year.
That's all good. That's all good.
We've got the
I didn't realize they were coming in.
We've got the 10-year growth plan update, and Ms. Finley, I believe you've got a presentation for us.
I'll be your sergeant at arms.
I do, thank you. I'm just gonna share my screen here. Can everyone see, can you see my screen okay?
Looks great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Suzanne Finley, and I am the Interim Manager of Financial Services. And I'm here today to present administration's recommendation for updates to the 10-year growth plan. This agenda item is before committee today in response to Standard 12 of the Budget and Taxation Guiding Principles policy, which reads, with specific reference to the municipal 10-year growth capital plan, a council motion is required to add or remove a capital project charter to or from the plan. So each year unfunded projects automatically move into the next year growth, resulting in an increase in the number of unfunded capital growth charters. As significant staff time is spent developing and reviewing the capital charters, administration reviews the 10-year plan annually to request removal of charters no longer required. New initiatives may also be identified and recommended to be added to the plan. The current growth capital plan is about 375.6 million, and the recommendations would increase to about 380.4 to align with council priorities and required growth investment. So as a result of administration's review process, the following 5 charters are being recommended for removal at this time. The rationale for removal has been detailed in the attachment to today's agenda report. In addition, 2 initiatives are also being recommended to be added to the plan, and project briefs have been provided in the attachment. It is important to note that adding projects to the 10-year plan does not commit council to funding them. The projects will be scored and prioritized along with all others in the plan to inform an administrative recommendation as part of our budget cycle. So in conclusion, administration is recommending that the Community Growth and Infrastructure Committee recommend to council that the municipal capital growth plan remove 5 project charters and include 2 new project briefs. That council members undertake a review to consider additional removals from the plan and provide those to the interim CAO via email by April 22nd, and that the revised 223 to 232 municipal capital plan be included in the 223 to 25 business plan and budget document, which will be provided to council this fall. So that concludes my presentation, and there are staff that are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. So just to add a little bit of clarity before kind of we go forward.
Sure.
So what we've been told in the past is that although unfunded projects, I mean, are unfunded, there's still a cost to maintaining those project charters. Is that still accurate?
That's a good question. There is a cost, I think, more in administration time. I mean, they're on the 10-year plan, and oftentimes that they're kept there because either we anticipate something will be coming up, but there are projects that it does take staff time to prepare them each year, to add them to the plan, to score, to prioritize them. And Anne or Diane McMorty might be able to step in, but I don't know if there's actually a true direct cost to just having a capital charter on the 10-year plan.
Okay, thank you. And did you want to jump in on that? I saw your mic go off.
No, I was just going to agree that Suzanne covered it well, so I didn't have anything more to add. Thank you, Suzanne.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. Can we get the project charters for, if we're asking for council to provide additional
Sure, like all of the charters on the 10-year plan, I think they were in the agenda report that was provided. Or are you talking about the 5?
No, like all of them, I think, if we're asking to add.
Oh, you would like to have all of the charters for last year's 10-year growth plan?
Yes, if we're being asked to propose
Remove them?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, we can, if you're okay, we'll provide you a PDF and send that in.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your patience, everyone. So if we could open that out for questions. Councillor Killick, did you want to start with this one?
Thank you, Councillor Jolly. Question is, does it actually, by having these on our 10-year growth plan or changing, does it change any of our reporting in terms of what our borrowing amount is able to go up to? Like, it's not a financial dollar cost, but does it limit our borrowing capability?
Through you to the chair, to Councillor Killick. No, it doesn't. That's sort of done independently. All it's doing is providing a sightline as to what the city might be having to undertake in the future on growth. But until council approves and until it's decided what's going to actually be funded, that's when you would look at where the borrowing would come in or how it would impact the city.
Okay.
So I'll just say the only other thing I'll add, just for your awareness, so how our borrowing limits are set is actually based on our revenues. So once we have our financial statements every year, it's basically a percentage of our revenues, excluding certain revenues. Like, it doesn't include grants and stuff, but it looks at our total revenues and it's a percentage of that.
Okay. Okay. The other question, on just in the detail of what we're adding, I wonder if, just for clarity, it says North St. Albert Trail Corridor, 13 million. Could we put a phase to that so that I know it's phase 3 from Mr. Schick's presentation or detail, but just keeping it easy to understand or easy to remember as we go forward. It kind of all blends together after a little while. So just for clarity's sake, thank you.
For sure, thank you. Yeah, we can update that to ensure it says phase 3.
Was Councillor? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair. I don't know if I was waiting to see if anybody else had a question that are on the committee first, but my question is in relation to something like Leclerc Way West Extension. Are there lost costs or in relation to, like, I mean, just following kind of the explanation as to why it's recommended to be removed. I mean, by 2026, there's the 2.3. I mean, I realize that that's, right now that's what's on the books, but I mean, are there more costs to stop it now than to continue with it? Because I mean, obviously we just had the presentation on all of the costs and the cost explosions in relation to it and the impacts. So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, should we not leave it on there and at least plan for it? Or, because I mean, if we were all of a sudden to get money and to start it up again, would we be behind the game? Or is there still some, for lack of a better term, economy of scales that we would have just because we've had previous work on it?
I might let Dean take this one if that's all right. Thanks, Dean.
Sure. Yeah, you bet. So in relation to specifically Leclerc Way, there hasn't been an investment in detailed design. There's been no land acquisition. There's been nothing really other than a functional study that was done when Leclerc Way was first kind of functional study was put forward, and all the design work and effort really focused on the east portion. Right now, as a bit of a status update, administration is starting to talk again and collaborate with City of Edmonton in what servicing needs and are in that southwest portion of our city and their servicing needs as well. But no, short answer would be is there hasn't been any direct kind of heavy resources allocated to this project or delivered on that would subsequently result in any lost costs.
Okay. But I mean, if Edmonton all of a sudden came to the table and said, look, we really want to investigate this for any number of reasons, we don't really lose anything just to start up again?
Nope, we would say fill your boots and then no.
And
we
bring
would,
your checkbook.
No, I think we will definitely, and that's part of the discussion, is to look back and say what's the influence since the functional study has been done, what influence and impact, anything new, updated information relevant to servicing needs, projected growth, projected development in that area that could change or maybe still be consistent. It can be applied moving forward. And essentially get back to a more defined plan for delivery that then both council administrations can come to both councils and have maybe more defined clarity and timelines or triggers identified with it.
All right. Okay. Good enough. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Mayor Herron, anything?
No, I'm good.
Councillor Broadhead?
I'm fine, thanks.
I do have
Okay.
another question.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Kelly. Councillor Kelly.
Sorry. So the two new projects that are being added to our growth, Meadowview Lane connection over to Rankin Drive, that's scheduled to happen in 2024, 26, 25 and 26. That's the plan, and a new traffic circle. Again, another traffic circle. By putting these in the plan, when does that actually come to council for approval to say that that is a priority with all of the other capital projects we have facing us? And I'll ask the same question for North St. Albert Trail piece. It does make sense. We want to get the road expanded up to the new fire hall location. So that's a priority, but we've got so many priorities, and in particular, the way it's put on the paper here, that 13 million in 2023 for the last third phase of St. Albert Trail. When do those actually come for saying, yes, those are the ones we're going to work on, and they're approved rather than just putting them in the plan here?
So through you, Chair, to Councillor Click, that's a very good question. So this is the first step that we do to get it onto the 10-year plan. And so then what happens is over the summer, we have a prioritization committee who reviews all of the growth charters that are on the 10-year plan. And based on the prioritized needs and the funding that we have, we will be bringing forward to council as part of our budget this fall, a list of all of the projects and which ones that we are recommending. And so it's that work that is done sort of before we present that in the fall, is what projects are our best needs, where is the funding that we're at, and then we bring it forth for you to approve it. And while we do try to look at things is in a 3 to 4 year time frame, council is only approving for 1 year. So even though we might have something shown as 25, 26, when we come forward in the fall, we'll only be asking for approval for all those in the 23 budget year. That makes sense?
Yeah, it's just the timing of seeing $13 million sitting there, for next year doesn't give very much time to approve it and then actually get a project charter and design work and out to tender for work to actually be done in that period of time. So
and the 13 million, and maybe Dean can allude to that, when something goes through for 23, for something like that, some of the work may have already been done, especially for North St. Albert Trail if the design is already in there. But when they present and they will do a full detailed charter, they will have kind of looked at that and looked at the timelines, and it might be 13 million in 23, but it may actually be over a couple of years. And Dean, do you have anything you might want to add to that?
No, you summarized it perfect. That's it exactly. I think it's a project like that, typically, the variance between like the Meadowview project and the North St. Albert Trail is that phase 3 of North St. Albert Trail is shovel ready, or as close as you can get to shovel ready, because we've already invested in the design, and that's kind of led to that knowledge and on the project needs and the funding. Whereas Meadowview, we still have conceptual work. We still have to do, a detailed design, any kind of land acquisition associated with the road right away. So those are already kind of captured, hopefully, in the timelines. And in the broader scheme of things, there are network improvements where some of these improvements are kind of, forecasted, they're anticipated. And I'll use an example of even Fowler Way, where, that initially was kind of anticipated for earlier delivery in 2024. With our timelines and where we stand now, that's likely going to be recommended for pushing. And this is where that annual budget review gives us the opportunity to inform council. And I that has pros and cons, but it shows, as any work advances, it gives us time to provide updates, forecasted a little bit better, and it may be earlier, it may be kind of able to be pushed or extended in timeline, and we try and give all the background information relevant to that and what informed on those timeline decisions.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that a little bit too. So the question you bring up is actually a great question. So it's something that we're working on. One of the recommendations, of course, that came out of the EY review is to move to a multi-year budget. And so that's one of the advantages, allowing us to kind of plan and kind of lock things in for a little bit longer period of time. It allows for better project management and planning for staff and all of those kind of things. And then the other piece, as I mentioned before, is that we're coming to council on May 30th to look at that sort of the debt side of it, right? Which is the whole longer term. And when you're looking at debt, we need to be, never mind looking at a 4-year, but we need to be looking at about a 20-year period to plan out our debt. So a lot of these bigger projects, that's going to be the way they go forward, is through debt finance. But we need to look at that kind of bigger picture piece as well. That should help with some of those kind of problems, that come with kind of an annual approval cycle.
Yeah. It just seems, thank you for the answer. It just seems to me we've got so many big capital projects on our to-do list, and they're all, ranking number 1, and it's going to be a challenge. So I just thanks for that clarity. It's going to be an interesting discussion we have later.
The interesting thing too about our 10-year plan, like excluding bringing on new debt, which we know we will be over the next couple of years, but if you just look at our existing funding, so the money that's coming in through grants, what we get through our pay-as-you-go and our taxes, our 10-year capital plan is only about 25% funded, right? So having this gigantic capital plan with really only access to 25% of the funding, there's a lot of things on there that are likely never going to happen, which is why we like to go through this process once in a while.
Yeah.
Because there's no point in having that many things on your list that really, if they're that low in the priority, that they're likely never going to receive funding. So what's the point of having them on the plan? So it's just an opportunity to review.
Good. Okay.
All right, I have a couple of really specific questions. The first is about the water and energy audits. So why, I understand it was not funded last year, but why are we removing it if we're just going to put it right back on for 2023?
Thank you for the question. I've got Megan here, and maybe she can provide an answer.
Yeah, good question. Essentially, it was removed because we've been completing the energy audits as we've been working on the capital RMR projects with the city facilities. So our municipal energy specialist has been doing them kind of on an ad hoc basis. So we decided to remove them because we were doing this work already, but with the caveat that if we take a look at the facilities that we've done to date, and if we need to, we'll add it back on in the following years.
Okay, thank you. And my next question is regarding the Service Place Fitness Center expansion. So remind me, are we, like, I understand that it's great to have a fitness center in there, but are we competing with local businesses? Like I'm seeing so many fitness centers opening up. So do we have any kind of policy?
And
that's a tricky one.
Through the chair to Councillor Jolly. I was just seeing if Danielle was on and wanted to answer it, but I can jump in. So we don't have a policy about, you know, our fitness center operation in competition with others. We've looked at, we kept the fitness center expansion on the 10-year capital plan. It was council's preference to keep it on for a while to determine whether or not we needed to adjust the locker rooms. As we have growth in the community, are we meeting the needs of the community? What we have found through all of our research with other fitness facilities in the city is that the more fitness facilities we have, the more actually they grow. So Service Place was, I guess, a bit of a catalyst for fitness in the community and it's not necessarily in competition in terms of everyone has a bit of a different market. Service Place is very a family orientated market and it is in alignment with the other facilities that are provided in the rec center. So there are some synergies with having a fitness center and a pool and all those things together, which is unique in our community. So at this point, there's not any policy about that. That is definitely something that council could bring forward and want to have a conversation about or debate about. And it is still in the 10-year capital plan just for future. After we do the community amenities work and we look at what the community is looking for in terms of new amenities, and we look at what may be coming forward with new facilities, there may be an opportunity to go back and look at Service Place to see is there any additional renovations or things we want to do at Service Place to meet the community need into the future.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my last question is probably for Mr. Schick again. With the TMP update, so this kind of predates my time. Are we doing those every 6 years? Is that kind of the intent of that budget?
Sorry, we are anticipating every 5 years is normally what they were budgeted before earlier, but we saw just in regards to where we were standing with our TMP implementation and the status of things and the influence of other strategies being brought forward, we delayed that and deferred it to possibly 2023. So it'll be in council's consideration for budget in 2023 to do a TMP update, which puts us in a really good time because the region, the EMRB just did a regional TMP update. And so we can be informed and influenced by that as well and take those into considerations.
Okay, thank you. So that's kind of, that would be like best practices every 6 years or thereabouts?
Thereabouts. I think it's kind of relevant to, again, where the city stands, what growth, what influences, anything kind of changing, any other substantial documents that could be used to inform or, you know, again, influence the TMP itself. But I think we're sitting really well right now for our timeline delivery of the next anticipated TMP.
Okay, thank you. Looking around the room, Councillor Gillett, go ahead.
This may be a housekeeping question, I'm not sure, but I did notice a question on the proposed 2023 to 25 plan. And then the next slide after that, it says 2023 to 31. The very first line says a rec center community access site construction shows 14 million every year for 23, 24, 25. Am I misreading that, or what does that mean? What does that mean?
Placeholder. Go ahead, Dan.
Is it a placeholder? It's just a placeholder that
We took what we thought would be the entire project, divided it by 10.
So it is just a placeholder, Councillor Killick. And what will probably come forward in 2023 is we're still working through the community amenities site and some of the concept planning.
Yep.
So we'll have a better idea of what may come forward in 23. I would anticipate though that we would see that pushed out a bit and potentially looking at that in 2024 when servicing and everything is a bit more understood at that point. But it was just a placeholder at this point.
placeholder. Perfect answer. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Heron, did I see your hand up? No?
Nope. I'm good.
Okay. If there are no other questions, Councillor Killick, do you want to do this one?
Sure. The Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee recommend to council that 1, administration update the 2023 to 2032 municipal growth capital plan to remove the project charters provided as an attachment to the April 11th, 2022 agenda report entitled Growth Capital Plan Removals. 2, that administration update the 2023-2032 municipal growth capital plan to include the project briefs provided as an attachment to the April 11th, 2022 agenda report titled Growth Capital Plan Additions. 3, that council members undertake a review to consider additional removals from the 2023-2031 growth capital plan and provide via email these recommendations to the interim CAO by April 22nd, 2022. And 4, the revised 2023-2032 municipal capital plan be included in the 2023-2025 business plan and budget document provided to council in the fall of 2022, along with funding recommendations guided by the capital prioritization matrix. And we should operationalize that plan.
No, we shouldn't operationalize anything. Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Killick.
There was a D square.
I'm going to go right to calling for the vote. So all those in favor?
Let us debate anything.
I would do
Or we know how the vote's going to go. Thank you. That was unanimous and that passed, which brings us to last but not least, we've got Ms. Caulfield with the cemetery bylaw. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I am here. Yes, I was thinking about making an inappropriate joke, but I'm not going to. So we'll just,
to me to do.
or David, I will leave that up to you all. So I'm here this afternoon to present the new cemetery bylaw 09/2022. So by way of background, the Provincial Cemeteries Act permits municipalities to own and operate cemeteries. The City of St. Albert does own and operate the St. Albert Municipal Cemetery. Prior to the recent annexation of Sturgeon County, which became effective on January 1st of this year, the cemetery was not located within the city's boundaries, although the city does actually own the land. Section 12 of the MGA provides that a bylaw of a municipality only applies inside the municipality's boundaries unless two municipalities agree with one another that a bylaw passed by one municipality has effect inside the boundaries of the other municipality, and that the councils of both municipalities pass bylaws approving that agreement. The current bylaw, the current cemetery bylaw, does not comply with this requirement of Section 12 of the MGA, which means that the validity of the current bylaw is in question, notwithstanding the fact that the annexation has now occurred. As I mentioned, the Cemeteries Act and the regulation associated with it, as well as the Vital Statistics Act, govern and standardize the operation of all cemeteries in Alberta, including those that are owned and operated by municipalities. The current cemetery bylaw, which was attached to the package so you could read it, it is very detailed, it's very cumbersome, it's operational in nature, and it contains a great deal of content that unnecessarily overlaps with the provincial statutes and regulations. It's not advisable to have in place a bylaw that must go back to council for amendments every time a change, however minor, is made to regulations or to best practices related to cemetery operations. So, therefore, since a new cemetery bylaw is needed in order to be certain of its validity, after the annexation has now brought the cemetery lands within the boundaries of the City of St. Albert, and since administration believes that a simplified bylaw is a better way to regulate our cemetery, the proposed new cemetery bylaw does the following things. Similar to the current bylaw, it delegates authority regarding the operation and maintenance of the cemetery to the CAO, subject always to the requirements of all applicable provincial legislation, and includes the authority to set cemetery standards as required. It also removes, I said most in the agenda package, and I looked at it again in preparation for this meeting, and I realized it removes all operational detail pertaining to the running of the cemetery from the bylaw, which permits operational issues to be handled more quickly and more nimbly by administration in accordance with applicable provincial legislation, and allows quicker responses to new issues or to new best practices as they arise. The new bylaw, pardon me, maintains essentially the same list of violations as the old bylaw, although a few updates have been made. For example, it's no longer a violation in the new bylaw to walk on a plot. And we have also added an exception to permit service dogs in the cemetery, which was not previously included in the old bylaw. The new bylaw maintains the same fine amount for violations as the current bylaw. The new bylaw does delay the effective date of the new bylaw until September 30th of this year. And this is to provide sufficient time to establish an administrative directive, which will house the operational details that are currently located in the old bylaw pertaining to the running of the cemetery into the new administrative directive. And finally, the new bylaw repeals the current cemetery bylaw on the same date that the new bylaw will come into effect. For your information, fees related to cemetery services are set in accordance with a city council policy, separate and apart from the bylaw. So those are not discussed in the old bylaw and they're not addressed in the new bylaw for that reason. If the new cemetery bylaw 09/2022 is passed by council, there will be no operational changes to the cemetery. Customers will not experience any changes to cemetery services, and administration will be undertaking some work to create a new administrative directive and to update some of the documentation used in the cemetery services package, which is provided to customers. All that said, administration is recommending that bylaw 09/2022, the new cemetery bylaw, be given all 3 readings. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for, yeah, go ahead, Councillor Killick.
Yes, it's my day.
Great.
Marta, with the reconciliation efforts that are ongoing, I assume that this new bylaw will still accommodate any of the requests that we get for reconciliation, exploratory requests, memorials, those kinds of things would still be able to be accommodated. I just want to make sure we don't lose any of that ability to meet our not our obligations. I can't think of a word for reconciliation.
Yes, thank you for the question. I do see Cindy DeBruin is here, but so the short answer to your question is yes, those accommodations or any requests will definitely be accommodated under the new bylaw. And Cindy, if you have any questions or sorry, any more information to add detail to that question, please feel free.
Just that we've been, as you know, collaborating with the community and we're collaborating with Marta in the development of this. So we will absolutely do everything we can to support any of those efforts. Councillor Killick.
Okay, thank you.
Another good question.
Great. I have nothing. Anyone else? All right. Councillor Broadhead, do you want to make a motion?
He's dying. He's dying to.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee recommend to Council that bylaw 09/2022, the cemetery bylaw, be given all 3 readings.
Thank you. I'll accept that because we're making great time. Did you want to have any opening remarks?
Now we can debate.
No, closing remarks though. Anyway.
Okay. Anyone else? No, closing remarks.
You know what? This has been on our cap list for ever. Feels like probably 3-ish years that it's been in the works. So thank you, Marta, for finally getting in front of us. And obviously it's easy for us, but I know it was a lot of work for you. So thank you for doing it. That's all. It's just been around for a while. We've been waiting.
All right, Councillor Broadhead, go ahead.
Was the opening and closing was a lame attempt at humor. So.
Okay. I will call for the votes. All those in favor, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's unanimously. That passes. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to double check here. Cheryl can yell at me if I've missed anything. That's it. So meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Long day, everybody. Long.
That was a long day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie.
Good job chairing from there while the rest of us are sitting here.